The Reds series win over the New York Mets was exactly what they needed, but it's what comes next that's the real trick.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Stephen Offenbaker. His name's Jeff Carr. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. We've been covering this team in podcasting form for about 14 seasons. We love the Reds. We love baseball. And we love talking about those things with you. On today's show, the Reds' next test is one that they have failed a lot in recent years. We're going to explain why later in the show. Reds general manager Brad Meador had a lot to say about the trade deadline, but he probably should have just kept it simple. We'll tell you what we mean and give the Reds some free PR advice here in just a few minutes. But we are going to begin with this weekend series. How great it was up in Flushing's, Queens, where the Cincinnati Reds take a series from the $1 New York Mets. To start the second half, air quotes around that correctly. Jeff, what a great time to get into this episode that's brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets back when your first $5 bet wins. And listen later for some great betting advice from Jeff. You're not going to want to miss that. All right, Jeff, let's dive into this series up in New York because the Reds did a thing they don't do. They came out swinging in the second half. The Bats did what they needed to do. They went up against a team that on paper was better than them, and they won the series, and they did it pretty convincingly.
Yes, and this was the kind of series, Steve, that we just said coming into it, just win one. Don't get swept. Keep the whole, never been swept in 2025 banner up. And they did that immediately by winning on Friday night, and then they won in a very convincing, albeit dramatic fashion on Saturday. And the reason that I say it's convincing is that in both cases, they fell behind early. In both cases, the Mets were the ones that were the aggressors, but the Reds were really able to take some good performances in the middle innings and get this win. This is a huge series when you cannot undersell this. They were playing with house money on Sunday. I really felt like they had a chance to get out of there with a sweep. But the fact that they got out of there with a series win, I am just so happy. That's why I had to break the captain's hat back out, Steve. I had to break it.
Yeah, I'm not going to be greedy. I would have loved to have had the sweep, but you know what? 2 out of 3 ain't bad against this New York Mets team. There was a lot of good things that we saw in this series, Jeff. I liked the timely hitting when we needed it. We liked what we saw from Austin Hayes being the guy reminding everybody really why the Reds went out and signed him. We saw a significant power blow from Tyler Stephenson, which was nice. He's coming out strong in the second half on his chase to 40. No, huge. Not really. But he did hit a big home run in this series that had a lot of power behind it, which has kind of been lacking lately. So it was really good to see him jump on a ball and really just beat it.
I think by my calculations, if he hits a home run every other day, he will reach that 40 home run plateau.
Hey, I'm not wrong yet. I'm not wrong till I'm wrong, right?
I really liked, eliminate. Yeah.
I really liked what we saw from a lot of players in this series. I really liked seeing Austin Hayes turn it on. I really liked Tyler Stephenson hitting for some power. I really like Spencer Steer at first base. Spencer Steer should never play anywhere else ever again. He just is this team's first baseman now, and it's time that everybody leaned into that because it's true. He's the best first baseman on the roster.
Yeah, and I have some more comments on that a little bit later on because that was one of the things that they talked a little bit about, at least in a couple of different articles surrounding the Reds and their trade deadline strategy. But no, back to this series. What I was most impressed with, Steve, was Emilio Pagán, because both on Friday and Saturday, Friday night, he gets called into a mess, an absolute mess in the ninth inning that was created by Connor Joe because he couldn't catch a fly ball that was right at his glove. And the reason that he was even brought into that game is because the tying run was at the plate. In a game where the Reds led 8-2 at one point, they were sweating in the ninth inning, and Emilio Pagán, he brought his sweat towel. He wiped the sweat off everybody's forehead. Then on Saturday, man, it wasn't even just, give me a towel for the sweat. It was like that scene from Airplane when the guy's like trying to fly the plane and it's just waterfalls of sweat going down, the way that ninth inning went, and how he was able to strike out Juan Soto, which maybe that was what the umpire was trying to get back for on the Reds on Sunday. Tried to help him out a little bit, give him a walk when he should have struck out, whatever. That's fine. I'm not mad about it. But Emilio Pagán gets a great strikeout there, gets the great pop out to end the game. He's screaming, he's yelling, he's excited because that was an exciting win. But then, of course, you also had those amazing comments that he made after Saturday's game where he's just like, look, it's our job to come in here and make it obvious that the front office needs to bring some help in here. Let's make a real run at this thing. And that's exactly what we're doing right now.
We saw Emilio Pagan really lean into a leadership role in this series. He came in, he was nails, he got his job done. And then you're right. The comments after the game saying, even a little bit more attention getting is the words trying to force the front office hand. Those were the words, trying to force their hand to go out and make a move to make a.
He chose those words carefully. You could tell
he did. So, that wasn't a off the cuff remark. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. He knew exactly when he wanted to say it. And he did those things. And I think as we're going to get into here in a little bit, it has now spiraled into this whole thing about what the Reds are and are not going to do in the trade deadline, Jeff. But it all started with what they were able to do in New York. You're right. I would have been happy to get out of this Mets series with one win, just not being swept. And instead, they played in each and every game like a team that could sweep and very nearly did. And I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about what this looks like when everybody's going a little bit. We saw some things in this series also, Jeff, that we haven't seen before. In Sunday's game, we saw your boy, Noelvi Marte, make the move to the outfield. And I think
didn't look that bad either.
If I remember correctly, you and I talked about this 2 weeks ago and said that under the right circumstances, this could be a move, but that it shouldn't be to get Santiago Espinal in the lineup. And they played Noelvi Marte in the outfield today to get Santiago Espinal in the lineup.
Yeah, it was a little bit one of those like 6-1, half dozen the other. It's like congrats and also sorry. But that's exactly how this came off. And honestly, I didn't think he looked that bad. Didn't think he looked overmatched. I find it a little bit intriguing, and I want to get into what I think it means for the future moving forward. But to think of where he started, whenever the Reds acquired him, he was a shortstop prospect. He moved to third base because it was obvious Ellie was going to be short, Marte was going to be third, and now it kind of feels like they're just making sure they get his bat in the lineup. He is becoming what Spencer Steer was, where it's obvious that they're like, no, Spencer Steer ain't moving. Like you said, his best position's first base, and honestly, defensive statistics confirm that. They're saying that he's one of the best first basemen defensively in the league. So who else is going to take over that role? Could be Marte. Marte is an athlete, man. And I know, any references to PEDs aside, it's still clear that he's an athlete. And the throws that he made from right field, you cite those in a little bit. You give him a little bit more time and a little bit more reps out there. I could see that working out. And you're right. That was the perfect scenario. Like we said, house money on a Sunday afternoon. If you win, great. And if you don't, whatever, you already won the series. So get some time for Marte out there in right field. I do like what I saw from that. I think that was my favorite thing from Sunday. And aside from that as well, is just the Reds continue to pitch well. Like, think about how much money the Mets are spending on their lineup. We would kill to have the Reds spend that much money on their lineup. And the Reds pitching staff was just like, nah, man, you ain't doing nothing to us. I mean, Juan Soto got a home run in the first game, and he had a nice game on Saturday, but he did not kill the Reds. And they did a great job of keeping him down, keeping Alonso down. Pete Alonso was like nowhere in this series. And Francisco Lindor as well. All-star Francisco Lindor, who started over Ellie De La Cruz. Ellie looked better. Yep, exactly. So, love the way that the Reds played in this series. They did exactly what they needed to do, and they beat the New York Mets in a series there in Flushing, Queens. But the Reds' strategy for the trade deadline was a touchy topic this weekend. because of what Brad Meador had to say.
Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com.
Make sure you are subscribed. That way you don't miss anything that we've got coming for you all throughout the season. Obviously, trade deadline season, lots coming at you here. But as we move past that, too, this is going to be a summer to remember. And we're going to be with you every step of the way. And by the way, when you subscribe, you also get the Reds postcast with Tim Daniel. He goes live at the end of every Reds game, and it's in your audio feed shortly thereafter. We appreciate our everydayers out there. And if you're not an everydayer, become one right now by subscribing. All right, Steve, this weekend, it was funny because it feels like, and it's not every time, but it feels like whenever the Reds try to do something good, then the media talks to somebody in the front office, and we kind of forget about the good for a minute because Brad Meador spoke with multiple reporters from the Reds media throng, and he had a lot to say. Now, there's one specific part of what he said that everybody is just losing their minds about. And then, quite frankly, I lost my mind about it too until I read a little bit more into it. But I'll say this, I still have the same take that I had when I read the context, the out of context quote. And that is that Brad Meador and anybody in the Reds front office just need to keep it simple.
They've never done that, though, Jeff. How can you
never.
ask them to? We've offered in the past some free PR advice to the Reds front office, and they just never quite take us up on it. You're absolutely right. The quote that's out of context, paraphrasing, is they're not going to do something at this trade deadline for a chance to make the playoffs that's going to jeopardize the team's future for the next 5 years. They're not going to trade away top prospects. And that bit of mini quotes definitely can give some fuel to the fire in Reds country. And having only heard that bit, I can see why people were upset because we've been waiting for somebody to do something since 1991. So it's a little patience are wearing thin around here. But when you take the broader quotes, when you look at it, he eventually wandered into saying what he needed to say. He stumbled, bounced off a couple trees, tripped over a rock, picked himself up, fell down again, and then kind of said the right thing. It wasn't pretty, but he finally got there.
It's kind of a Michael Scott thing, right? Like it's an improvisation. He starts a thought and he doesn't know where it's going, and by the time when he's finished, he's just glad that it's over. And that's kind of how it felt whenever you're reading the different angles. And I found it intriguing because based on who you read, that quote might not have been included because if you look in the Enquirer, Gordon Wittenmeyer did not include that part of the conversation that they had with him. He included a lot of other stuff, though, because here are some of the other things that Brad Meador said. Quote, we're certainly talking to every team right now. We're trying to see what the options will be. We have to keep playing well to be able to think about adding. That being said, we're always going to look at both short-term and long-term. What it means right now, I don't really know. He also said, quote, we've taken a firm buyer's stance and are in the midst of talks with every would-be trade partner to gauge options for adding a hitter and bullpen help, which we love to hear that. And then another one said, that being said, if there's something we can do to boost this team and put us in a better position to get into the playoffs and have a better chance in the playoffs, then we're going to do that. Those are all the things that had he just said that, everybody would be just we'd be psyched. We'd be like, let's go. They're saying the right things. But he said the other thing of telling us what he's not going to do. Like, do or do not. But don't tell me what you're doing not.
And really, his last quote, he could have just said one line and been done with it, which is hopefully we're able to add and keep moving forward. That's all he would have had to say.
Right. And I know there's a tendency, and there was probably follow-up questions, and he's talking, he has to answer these follow-up questions and things like this. But there are times where I understand, as somebody who's covered many different sports from different angles and all this other stuff, that there's just going to be a carbon copy answer. And he should have had that carbon copy answer for this moment. This is something where he and Nick Kroll have just struggled mightily with, where it's like either they got too comfortable or they got too tired of all the different follow-up questions, and they finally said the weird thing. The Reds front office needs to stop saying the weird thing. They need to stop letting the voices in their heads say, you know what, go ahead and tell them. Go ahead and tell him, because there's so many thoughts that stem from the direct quote that Brad Meador had, where he said, we're not going to do something that sets us back over the next 5 years right now. And I've said multiple times, we've covered this on the pod. Everydayers will know there are moves out there that they don't have to do that. So why say that? Why even bring that up? I get it. They're not going to go get Sandy Alcantara. They're not going to lure Paul Skeens away from Pittsburgh. There's probably not going to get a Eugenio Suarez, because I've seen some articles that say that he is the best player available on the trade deadline.
Yep.
So count the Reds out of that. That's fine. You can still improve the team with other moves. You don't have to tell us what you're not going to do.
You know, I've seen some takes out there, Jeff, where people are like, good, because now the Reds are finally sticking to a plan. They're going to follow the Tampa model. They're not going to trade away the prospects. They're going to instead gather the prospects. They're going to do these things. Following the Tampa plan doesn't mean you can't trade minor leaguers. Following the Tampa plan means that you trade your major leaguers if you can't re-sign them with 2 years or less of team control. Following the Tampa plan means you bring in top-tier prospects with those trades, and then you use your system to fill the holes. You use your system to bring in the needs of the team to go make the playoffs. That's all part of the Tampa plan. And just to say, oh, they're running the Tampa plan, they're not going to trade minor leaguers good, is an incredibly bad take. They need to be making moves. They need to be band-aiding the holes. They need to be bringing in the needs, because they are primed to get a wild card spot. And they need to build on that. And they need to take advantage of it right now. So I think Brad managed to say all of those things in those 7 quotes, Jeff. And you're right. For simplicity's sake, he could have said it in about 2 sentences, and everybody would have been like, okay, good. They have a plan. They're looking at things. They're not going to do anything dramatically dumb. We can all get behind that. But the Reds have to go out and make a move. I love that he specifically mentioned a bullpen, some help for the bullpen. I love that he specifically mentioned going out and looking for a hitter, assuming that means outfield help. But I don't think you're necessarily wrong in your thoughts that it could be a third baseman.
Well, and I think that is where the Noelvi Marte to right field comes into this, because I could see this being that the Reds have had conversations with other teams, because, and again, I will rehash the quote that he had. He said, we've taken a firm buyer stance and are in the midst of talks with every would-be trade partner to gauge options for adding a hitter and bullpen help. He said that is something that he told Gordon Wittenmeyer. That is not a fabrication. That is not nobody's implying anything. Brad Meador said that. So they're figuring the thing out. And I wonder if the outfield market is crazy that they're thinking they can subvert that by getting an infielder. I don't love that idea. I would rather them get an outfielder and leave Marte at third base, but I can see this. At least the wheels are turning. At least there's a thought to this. And they're like, we can take advantage of the crazy athleticism of one player and help us out over here in this area where we don't have to overpay. And maybe we can still work this out for the lineup and for the defensive alignment as well.
Well, and I like the idea of playing Noelvi Marte every day, but I'm also realistic, Jeff, in that if they run him out there in the outfield, it's going to look a whole lot like Spencer Steer looked out there when he raised his hand and said, sure, I'll go play the outfield. There's going to be times where we're going to question what the heck he was looking at. What was he doing? What was that route? Where was he at? TJ Friedel better be on his toes, man. That's how that's going to
They
have
keep
to
putting
look.
so much on him, man. They keep putting so much on
TJ
him.
Friedel should win 2 Gold Gloves if he has to cover all that territory. But for me, I don't mind seeing Noelvi Marte's bat in the lineup. I don't mind, however it is they add a bat, if they can add a bopper to help build upon this offense. So I think being creative is good. The moral of the story is this, Jeff. The next time that Brad goes and talks to the media, he just needs to keep it simple.
Just keep it simple.
All right. Something else that is simple is beating the team you're supposed to beat, Jeff. Something that's simple is beating the team that's 20 games under 500 when you head to their stadium and face them. The Reds have not been good at that. In fact, they have really fallen on their faces several times, including this year. We're going to talk about why that needs to stop and how it can stop in this series with the Washington Nationals. We're going to talk about that coming up next.
Reds are heating up, and you should heat up over at FanDuel with your baseball knowledge, because they've got everything when it comes to baseball. We're heading into the stretch run, especially going through this trade deadline, and FanDuel is going to be hot on all the different bets, whether it's the money lines or the run lines, the over-unders, or the home run props. You can also look at futures like odds to make the playoffs, odds to win the division, all that great stuff. But I'm looking at tonight's game. I'm looking at the Reds and the Nationals tonight with Brady Singer going up against Jake Irvin. They've got the total runs over under set at 9. And it feels that way simply because both Singer and Irvin have tended to give up the runs, but I think both are going to pitch well. Jake Irvin's actually pitched really well against the Reds over his last couple of starts last season. So I'm a little bit worried about how the Reds are going to hit this guy tonight. I think take the under on total runs over under at 9. That's over at FanDuel. By the way, new users can make $150 in bonus bets with a winning $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com.
Take the under. It's like I don't even know you anymore. If you can't watch us here on YouTube, you can listen to us on your favorite podcasting app. We are seriously on every single one of them. Also, make sure you check out Locked On MLB Game Night. They watch every single game, every single night, and tell you all about it so you don't have to watch them yourself. They're in the Locked On MLB feed. All right, Jeff, let's get into this. When we did our first episode coming in out of the All-Star break, I said the Reds had to do 2 things. I said they had to come out, win series, open strong, beat teams like the Mets, because in years past, they've fallen on their face, a la Brewers 2023. But I also said when they do that, they can't just turn around and undo it by going on to the next series that they should win against a team they should clearly dominate and fall on their face and undo all of the wins that they just got. So now's the next big test, because they're heading to face a Washington Nationals team that, as I've mentioned, is 20 games under 500. It's a team that this Cincinnati Reds team should relatively easily dispatch. Now, my good friend Auntie Darlene is just yelling at the screen right now because she says I jinx them when I say things like this. But this is the next thing. We've asked Tito to make this team consistent. We've asked this team to get consistent. We've asked the players on this team to be consistent. And this is where they do it. To be consistent, they now go and win 2 of 3. Listen, sweeping is hard. I'm not saying they got to go into Washington and sweep the Nationals, but they need to win the next series. They need to keep winning series, and they need to win them against a team like the Nationals, where they haven't done that. I remind you of their loss to the Chicago White Sox. They have fallen and played down to the level of their competition as they've played up to the level of their competition. That's the next big fix that Francona really needs to get going.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because over the last couple of seasons, we saw that where it was like, yeah, the Reds were over 500 against teams with losing records, but just barely. Like last year, they were only 5 games over 500 when they played teams with losing records. And you would expect a team that has contending aspirations to be much better than that. They have improved in that area this year, but again, they're not consistent with it. This is where you build consistency. This Washington National Series right now is where you do it, because this team, the Washington Nationals, fired their manager and fired their general manager, president of baseball operations, Mike Rizzo, just 2 weeks ago. This team doesn't know where it is right now, and they don't know where they're going. And so you got to keep helping them along their way of confusion. You need to not make things look a little bit clearer for them. You need to not come in and all of a sudden make them feel better about it. Look, James Wood is going to hit a home run. He might hit 2 in this series. Make sure nobody else is on base when that happens. He's the guy you got to worry about. CJ Abrams might get on base, might steal a bag or 2. That's cool. Make sure that nobody gets a hit behind him. There's a couple of guys that are going to get theirs eventually on this team, but keep them cool and you're going to be all right. They did this with the Mets. Approach this the same way they did. And I feel like Tito is starting to instill this in the team. Again, it's not completely consistent right now because he's dealing with the same crew that really struggled over 2023 and 2024 in these types of games. But he keeps saying the thing, and I think eventually, as you repeat something enough, it just becomes the truth of someone. And he keeps saying the thing where, like, you know, they asked him about the series win in New York, and he's like, man, all that matters is the next game. The next game's what matters. If we worry about what we did yesterday, then we won't do what we need to do today. And I love that.
I do too. And I think the stability and the consistency is coming. Listen, I've been probably, I mean, I'm sure there's been people that have gone on record and been harder on Francona than I have, Jeff, but I feel like I've been pretty hard on him since the time he came here, because
I think
the expectation bar was set really, really high. But yes, Tito said a lot of things that you kind of got to put your money where your mouth is, and you got to back them up. And slowly, painfully, frustratingly as possible, they have turned a corner and started to do the things that Francona talked about. And this consistency is really the last big piece. This is the big piece that if they can get it under control and start winning series against the teams they should beat while continuing to play up and play with the big boys the way they have all along, they really are going to find themselves in one of these wild card spots. And then anything can happen, right? The Diamondbacks showed us that. You just have to get in the tournament. And I think this Cincinnati Reds team, with just a little addition at the trade deadline, gets in that tournament, and it starts now. We saw it with the Mets, but the next piece starts now. You go out and you win this series against the Washington Nationals.
Before I really dive into Brady Singer for just a minute, I have a question to ask you, and I think it would surprise you, but are the Reds over 10.5 games over 500 against losing teams this year? Have they won more than 10 games than they've lost against losing teams? I'm trying to find a way to ask this that doesn't confuse the heck out of me. I'll say that anyway, whatever the question.
Are you asking me if they're 10 games over 500 against?
Yes. Do you think that's where they are right now?
I don't think they're better than 10 games over 500 against those teams. I think they're over 500, but not better than 10.
They are 29-18 against teams under 500.
So 11 games over 500.
So there's evidence that things are getting better. We need to keep seeing it getting better, though. And it starts with Brady Singer tonight. Brady Singer has actually been on a nice stretch of games. I think that we tend to remember that start that he had against Houston where he just got clobbered. And you're like, okay, this is more of the Brady Singer that not necessarily we didn't think he'd get clobbered all the time, but that made all of his stats look a lot more like what we expected, you know, a pedestrian ERA that you're like, he's a solid pitcher every fifth day. We're not going to get that excited about him pitching. All of a sudden, his last 10 starts, Steve, he's got a 3.71 ERA, and his fielding independent pitching says that that's right where it should be. His FIP is 3.69. He's got a nice strikeout to walk ratio of 49-22 in 53 and a third innings. So I really think we're starting to see him cool down a bit.
And that's where he's at right now is kind of the guy I thought we were getting. The way that he pitched when he first got here, you and I were both like, wow, okay, where did this guy come from? But this guy that he is now is the guy we would have been just happy with if this is who he had been all along. A stabilizing middle of the rotation guy that you could just count on every fifth day to go out there and throw his pitches. And that's who Brady Singer is. And he's facing a team in the Washington Nationals that he should be successful against. This is a kind of a team that he should go out there and throw 6 or 7 innings of, he doesn't have to be scoreless and strike out 12, but if he gives up less than 2 runs over 6 or 7 innings against this Nationals team, that's a successful start. That's a quality start in my book. And the Reds move forward and they win this game.
My bachelor's degree math says that he is averaging 90 pitches per start. So expect him, once he's getting around that 90 pitch mark, to them really get the bullpen going in this game. Hopefully that won't be till about the 6th or maybe even the 7th inning. I'd like to see him go 7, but I expect him to go 6. If he goes less than 6, it's going to be tough because this bullpen's really been taxed through this Mets series, and they could use a break, Steve.
They absolutely could use a break, and we're going to tell you all about it. That's going to where we're going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Reds. But we'll be right back in your feed tomorrow telling you about Brady Singer's start and hopefully about a Cincinnati Reds win against these Washington Nationals. Now that you've made us your first listen, make sure you are subscribed so you get Tim Daniel in the postcast after the game today. Make sure you go head over to the Locked On MLB channel, where you not only get Paul Francis Sullivan giving you a national perspective on all things baseball, but you get MLB Game Night, where they're watching every single game so that you don't have to, and they're bringing you the local experts from the Locked On Network to tell you all about what's happening in each and every city. We'll be back in your feeds tomorrow, gathering up the news, the notes, the information, the rumors, and the reports to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
Been to any Coldplay concerts here recently, Steve?
Oh, dude, I have got an idea for a meme, and if I can get it made, watch my Twitter feed. I'm not saying Santiago Espinal is going to be in it, but he's going to be.
Garrett Hampson.